proposed to lower the draft eligible age from 19 to 18, according to USA Today's Jeff Zillgett. This wouldn't take place until the 2022 draft, and the draft age is collectively bargained, so that means both the league and the Players Association would need to agree on this change. Brian, there's a lot of complicating stuff. Of course, It was this way at one point, then it got changed back. Now they're going to change it back again. What are you hearing?
So the two sides have agreed that the age limit is going away. That is going to happen, and like you said, most likely by 2022. Now, to get to that spot, we've got some maneuvering going on. And there's bigger issues at play. For example, teams want all the medical information of these 18-year-old kids because they say, we didn't get to see them as long as other players. We want all their medical information. And the union's like, well, wait a minute. You're going to start asking for the 18-year-olds' medical information. You're going to then start asking for the 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds, and we don't want this to compromise them. So that's the kind of stuff that they're fighting. For the average fan out there, and especially if you're a sophomore in high school and you think you're going to be a stud, I think it's going to end up getting done by that class. So 3 more drafts, but sophomores, if you're a stud, you may be able to go right to the NBA.
I think it's great. I think that it's a lot of phenomenal players that are coming out of high school. So it's great that they open up that opportunity for those players to get in the league, and I just think it's going to make the game that much more exciting.
Is there more sort of a more sophisticated approach now that they're going back at this another time to avoid some of the problems that we hit? I don't want to name names, Kwame Brown, but some of the guys who maybe shouldn't have been drafted #1 overall, who were, just because everyone was like, well, I got to get to him now because otherwise someone else is going to get to him and all that.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the league has created an intermediate step where if you don't think you're necessarily ready to go into the draft, you can go to the D-League, make 6 figures.
The G-League, Brian.
I apologize. All the way to New York City, Olympic Tower, I'm sorry, the G-League, and make 6 figures starting next year, that you have an intermediate step, and that the idea is that players who are on the edge, like Kwame was and a number of others, would go that. Do I think that will happen? No, I think they're going for the millions that they can possibly get. But at least over the next 3 years, that's a pilot program.
I'm interested to see this because I certainly think, and look, the events of the last 24, 48 hours have just re-emphasized guys should get paid to play basketball, especially when there are so many millions of dollars circling around them. They should have the opportunity, if they're good enough in the league, to be in the league. All of that is the case. I believe all of that very strongly. But I also see the value of veterans on NBA teams. And when you go down a year, that means less vets play. You lose some of that experience in the locker room. I just think it's complicated. It's harder to judge those guys when you draft them. You might have more draft busts on the one time a team needs to have that high draft pick to rebuild their franchise. It's just there's a lot of nuance there. I mean, I think they should do it. They just need to figure out how to do it the right way. Speaking of young guys in the association, oh boy, Stephen Jackson had some thoughts last night. Take a listen.
What do you guys make of athletes today's game? You know, people like Anthony Davis or Kyrie who essentially hold franchises kind of hostage by demanding their way out. Or
I would be the first to say these guys these days they're spoiled. A lot of them are spoiled. And I was talking to one of the Hall of Fame football coach, and he said one thing he see about basketball from the outside looking in, more players today are interested in what the game could do for them. They don't actually love the game like we did.
Scott, you just spent 3 days in Charlotte with Stephen Jackson. Does he have a point there, or is this a little bit like generational?
Well, I think he does have a point, but I think he has to realize that the game has evolved so much from the days that we played. Owners have gotten richer. They put more invested into their teams, into building their facilities. They're doing things now to entice players, whether it's through their medical staff or, you know, their training facility or whatever. So I don't want to say that the players are spoiled, but they are reaping the benefits that the other great players ahead of them set out for them. So it's just from the outside looking in, yeah, it does look like that they're spoiled. They come to practice for breakfast, they eat lunch before they go home, and they can take dinner home with them. So it's great, but I just think that, you know, they're just reaping the benefits, and I appreciate what the teams are doing for the other players, because a lot of the players come in, as we say, like high school players. They're young. They're not used to preparing meals for themselves. So when they get put in those situations, then it's a great situation for them. I'm happy for the players as well as the organization.
To your point, I mean, teams started feeding them everywhere because they wanted them to eat better and stop eating fast food. Did you come in? Did you have charters the whole time you were in, or did you fly commercial at the beginning?
You're not at Airlines, Rachel.
I did a few commercial years, but we got
Eventually
into
moved to charters.
Number one, Steven Jackson is jealous of Don Nelson. number two, Steven Jackson at one time, and I
My
love.
experience with Steven Jackson is he doesn't need to be jealous of Don Nelson, but continue.
It's Friday. Number two,
Moving on.
number two, in terms of holding teams hostage or whatever, I just want to point out, and I love Stack Jack, that he at one time demanded a trade from the Warriors and got it. And number three, he's get off my lawn. You know, now he's joined. He's
Yes.
officially old now. That he can, you know, because back when he was
can we
going
roll
on,
the
there was
graphic,
guys
please?
from
This
the
is-
80s
yes.
going, oh, these guys are all spoiled today, you know, blah, blah, blah. So
I mean, that's the thing. I asked these guys, yes, there you go. Look, this is every generation, to your point, right? And we heard guys, Scotty, we heard the guys before you talking about how spoiled you guys were, right?
yes,
They get their
right.
own planes, they do whatever, all of that stuff, being run around like rock stars. So, you know, it does happen. And by the way, the kids of today, I guarantee you they'll be sitting around
Saying the same
20 years from now saying the same thing. So there we go. I want to talk about real quick. On Tuesday, we reported that a 2-year investigation by ESPN, the magazine Scott Eden, concluded that there was strong evidence that former NBA referee Tim Donaghy conspired to fix NBA games in the 2000s, not just bet on them. Today, the NBA issued a thorough response. The league asserts that statements from several people quoted on and off the record by ESPN conflict with other evidence of the case. It says analysis done as part of its original independent investigation were, quote, significantly more comprehensive than what ESPN appears to have done, and says that anecdotal evidence cited, quote, omitted material information. Basically, the league rebutted the article's core research. The NBA concludes that the ESPN article, quote, did nothing to add material value to the record of what happened, as it pointed out over a decade ago, and that the league will continue to, quote, expand our integrity efforts as gambling becomes more legal in the United States. Probably don't have to tell you that ESPN does stand by its reporting. We will be back after this break.